You know that phrase, the one that flashes across the screen, based on a true story. It sort of promises us this glimpse into history, right? Real events, real people. But how much truth are we actually getting? Today, we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating and, yeah, sometimes pretty problematic world of films claiming to be based on a true story. We're going to unpack the creative liberties filmmakers take, why they take them, and what that really means for us as viewers. Our mission here is to explore where that line, between creative license and maybe outright falsification lies, and to understand the impact these choices have on how we see history and maybe even how they reshape events in our collective memory.
Exactly. And to do this, we've gathered, well, quite a stack of thought-provoking sources. We've got spirited Reddit discussions from film buffs and even paranormal investigators, articles dissecting historical accuracy in Hollywood, and a really deep look into one of the most, frankly, infamous true story horror cases out there. So the big question is, what does all this mean for the stories we think we know?
Okay, let's unpack this then. That based on a true story tag, our sources suggest it's often more of a, let's say, creative launch pad than a factual guarantee. The core idea seems to be that Hollywood consistently prioritizes, well, emotional impact and telling a good story over sticking strictly to the facts, even if it means reshaping reality quite a bit. Films opening with that phrase might lead us to believe we're seeing events pretty close to how they actually happened.
But yeah, our sources are very quick to point out that this is, well, almost never the case. It's true, there's this fundamental difference, right? Books often make you think, whereas films are really designed to make you feel. And that requires, significant compression of the plot, turning internal thoughts into dialogue, emotions into gestures. So filmmakers often need to take liberties for what they'd call quality storytelling, or maybe to make an interesting point.
That makes sense. So if real life isn't, I suppose, dramatic enough, they'll just manufacture the drama. One source even mentioned that the real members of Queen apparently got along too well, which, doesn't fit the standard biopic conflict narrative.
Exactly. Or they need to fit it into a formula-friendly story, like the classic musician biopic mold, which, ironically, often makes the film feel, as one source put it, more cliched and formulaic than the actual messy truth.
And it's not just about juicing up the drama, is it? It's also practical. Compressing decades of life into 2, maybe 3 hours. That means changing dates, creating composite characters, combining several real people into one fictional one. And let's not forget the influence of consultants, especially when living people shown in the film, like, say, the surviving band members, have a say in how the story gets told.
Bohemian Rhapsody is such a prime example here. The film showed Mary and Freddie's relationship as quite fractured, but in reality, they were lifelong friends. Total opposites. And remember Roy Featherstone, Mike Myers' character.
Oh,
He
yeah.
wasn't real at all. Just there for a Wayne's World gag and a cutaway during the Live Aid sequence.
And Bohemian Rhapsody got some specific flack for that kind of thing, didn't it? One source called it a generic rise and fall band story that Queen was just sort of plugged into.
Mm.
Almost like it was made more to, make money off Queen's name than for actual Queen fans. What does that say about the commercial pressures?
It says quite a lot, I think. Some viewers actually said they were grateful for posts pointing out the inaccuracies. They felt like the movie was, quote, lying to me.
Mm.
And there's a strong suggestion that the surviving Queen members, who were consultants, wanted Freddie's death placed about halfway through the film, so the rest could show Queen carrying on without him. That choice alone could have seriously tinted the lens on Freddie's personal story.
Then you've got The Imitation Game. Critics loved it, sure, but one analysis found only about 42% of it was true or true-ish. And that drops to like 17, 18% if you're being really pedantic about the details. Alan Turing, for instance, portrayed as this shy, closeted man.
When sources say he was really quite the opposite. A huge deviation, absolutely. Or think about the King's Speech, which apparently greatly exaggerated the King's stammer for dramatic effect, and Darkest Hour showing Churchill consulting ordinary people on the tube.
Right, when he was known for being a strong believer in elitism, doesn't quite track.
Not at all. And The Social Network, that's a fascinating one. Attributing Mark Zuckerberg's motivation for Facebook to a breakup that apparently never happened. He was already dating the woman he later married. And the actor Jesse Eisenberg reportedly made no attempt to look, sound, or behave like the real Zuckerberg.
Which is maybe why some films get praised for being upfront about not being accurate, like The Favorite or Frank or Neruda. They openly take liberties, but maybe for more unique storytelling rather than pretending they're giving a history lesson.
Exactly. They set that expectation clearly. You even see it in smaller ways, like in 127 Hours, where one source joked Hollywood pretty-eyed up, but totally not ugly guy for the film to work.
Huh. And don't forget Fargo, famously starting with, this is a true story, but it's completely fictional. They just slap on the based on a true story tag for,
Oh.
what, believability? That feels almost brazenly deceptive, doesn't it?
It really does.
It makes you ask, at what point does this creative license just go too far? What responsibility do filmmakers actually have when they're dealing with real people and real events?
That's the ethical minefield, isn't it? Especially when someone's reputation is potentially on the line. The Richard Jewell controversy is a really potent example of this. The film depicts the journalist Kathy Scruggs as trading sex with an FBI agent for information.
And crucially, outside the film's story, there's no evidence for this claim. It was extensively researched for years.
Right. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, where Scruggs worked, actually demanded a disclaimer. They said the portrayal perpetuates a damaging public perception of women in journalism and called it a tired and sexist trope. Warner Bros. Fired back, arguing the paper was just trying to malign our filmmakers and cast.
But there was a disclaimer, wasn't there? Something vague about dialogue and events being created for dramatization.
Yes, but its vagueness was the very thing people criticized. It didn't specifically address the Scruggs portrayal. It leaves you wondering, is it ethically okay to fictionalize a real person like that, damage their reputation, even potentially, and does it matter if the person is deceased? Scruggs died back in 2001, long before the movie. Does that change the ethics? It's incredibly tricky.
Yeah, it really is. And it seems to highlight these different views on what accuracy even means. Historians are looking for, what, contextual authenticity, sticking to sources, representing the general expert consensus.
But for the general public, us watching the movie, our idea of accuracy might just be how well it fits our preconceived ideas. Often, maybe we even want a more romanticized version just for entertainment.
And that's the danger, isn't it? The big concern is that a huge chunk of the audience watches these films and genuinely believes they're learning that history. They're essentially being lied to without realizing it, as one source puts it. And that leads to the nation's collective grasp on the truth slipping even further.
That's a really profound point. These films can become the accepted historical reference if they aren't critically examined, which leads to misunderstandings and can even impact things like national identity. A BBC study found people, especially younger ones, get more of their history knowledge from popular media than from academic sources.
Wow. You think about examples like U-571. It made audiences believe the U.S. captured the Enigma machine.
Yeah.
Caused outrage in Britain, right?
Didn't a U.S. president have to apologize?
He did. Or Braveheart. Apparently it was debated in the Scottish Parliament. For its historical inaccuracies, its anachronistic reading of the past, even its racist representation of the English. It genuinely impacted national sentiment. It really shows the power these stories wield. Which brings us to a genre where maybe the true story claim gets even murkier. Horror. Sometimes the lines blur deliberately to enhance the fear. Let's dive into one of the most chilling and debated cases, the Doris Bither haunting. How did reality get twisted for scares there?
Okay, the Doris Bither case, sometimes called the entity haunting. This happened in Culver City, California back in 1974. It became the basis for Frank DeFelitta's 1978 book, The Entity, and then the pretty intense 1982 film with Barbara Hershey. Doris Bither contacted a parapsychologist, Barry Taff, in '74. She claimed she was being attacked, even raped, by one or several invisible entities. She also reported seeing luminous, transparent human shapes and classic poltergeist things moving, noises. It's important context, though, that Bither reportedly had a history of physical and substance abuse, a traumatic childhood, and was living illegally in a condemned house at the time.
So Taff and his colleague Carrie Gaynor, they investigated from a UCLA parapsychology lab, right? Though apparently it's now defunct.
That's right. They investigated for about 10 weeks. They specifically didn't investigate the alleged spectral rape claims, as those predated their involvement. And Taff himself actually stated he didn't believe those specific incidents occurred.
Okay, so what did they report seeing or experiencing?
Well, they reported various poltergeist-type phenomena, objects falling from shelves, these strange lights, bad odors, cold zones. Interestingly, they noted these occurrences actually seemed to decrease over the course of their visits. The only thing they called objective evidence were some photos taken with Polaroid and 35mm cameras. These showed things like a static circular band of light, an irregular bright line, some shapeless overexposed areas. An infrared camera was apparently accidentally overexposed.
Strange lights. What were they like?
Described as yellowy green balls of light about the size of a human fist that would dart around the rooms quickly and in all different directions. Taft called them plasma-like.
Oh,
There's that famous photo of Doris on her bed with an arc of light above her. The analysis suggests that the arc wasn't projected, but existed in space somehow. Very odd.
and could they capture this consistently?
Apparently not easily. Professional photographers struggled because the phenomena were so erratic. There was one incident mentioned where witnesses reported seeing a large male apparition, lime green, over 6 feet tall, that articulated and then vanished. Everyone saw the same thing.
But the cameras got nothing.
Nothing. They also reported temperature drops and strong smells, but couldn't consistently measure or source them with equipment.
So Taft had his own theories about what was going on.
Oh, absolutely. He proposed this complex recipe or formula. He thought it might involve an individual being hypersensitive to electromagnetic or geomagnetic fields, maybe prone to mild seizures, and an environment with fluctuating fields. He called it inductive resonance coupling, basically, the nervous system interacting with the local magnetic field, like a living antenna. He also had this psychovirus theory, suggesting some people might have an energetic alteration that propagates the activity, which could even move with them. He believed the phenomena moved with Doris, which points more to a poltergeist case attached to a person rather than a traditional haunting attached to a place. He even speculated the energy source might be endothermic, meaning it cools the surroundings and may be connected to something like zero-point energy from physics. Really out there stuff.
Wow. Okay, so how did the film, The Entity, adapt all this? You said it was heavily based, but not a direct copy.
Right. The film focuses on Carla Moran, a single mom attacked by an unseen force. It has these shockingly graphic scenes of sexual violence, and it really pushes the theme of women not being believed when they claim to be sexually assaulted.
But it made changes from Bither's actual story.
Significant ones.
Yeah.
It simplified Doris Bither's complex personal history and multiple entities into a single primary malevolent force targeting Carla with explicit assaults. That's a major narrative shift. It also fictionalized investigative experiments that did not happen in reality,
Right.
like building a whole controlled environment to trap the entity. Taft was a technical advisor, but he apparently felt the director, Sidney Furie, dramatically rewrote the script and weakened it.
And the film seemed to have an agenda, didn't it? Something about villainizing skeptics.
Yeah, it definitely seems to villainize the skeptical psychiatrists and the university UCLA. This likely reflected Taft's own personal beef with the university administration and those skeptical of his work. One analysis suggests the film's agenda was almost like propaganda for all the Bither researchers involved, painting their lab as this bastion of dangerous information that the establishment wanted to suppress.
So how was the film received? It sounds intense.
It was. Critics called it brutal, chilling. Barbara Hershey's performance got a lot of praise, and the musical score is apparently legendary for causing instant anxiety and extreme fear. But it also drew criticism for being potentially misogynistic or anti-feminine. And again, despite claiming to be based on a true story, it raises those deep ethical questions about adapting someone's real-life trauma, especially alleged sexual trauma, for entertainment.
This whole exploration from biopics to horror really underlines the power of narrative, doesn't it? Films have this great power to bring a personality or event to the public conscience, but so often they present this oversimplified and frankly inaccurate image.
Which loops back to that question about us, the audience. Are we sometimes less concerned with the actual historical truth? Do we maybe prefer that romanticized version just because it's more entertaining?
And what about the filmmakers? What's their role, their accountability in all this? They're not bound by the same historical framework as scholars, right? They're free to manipulate and omit facts to create an entertaining narrative. One source even said they're creating a history of the present rather than the past. That's a striking phrase.
It is, and there's a split view. Some argue filmmakers are just responsible for creating a vivid and moving artwork. End of story. Others believe they share an obligation similar to journalists to truthfully depict real-life events, unquote. The argument is that historical portrayal carries accountability, and films just aren't seen as mere works of fiction anymore, especially with that true story label.
It's that tension again, the spirit versus the facts. You mentioned films like Frank or Neruda. They play fast and loose with the truth, but maybe they're more enlightening by freeing themselves from historical accuracy, focusing on capturing the spirit instead of exact recreation. That's an interesting idea.
It is, but...
But is there a risk there? Prioritizing spirit, especially with real people, real events, could it just be a way to create a convenient fiction and slap true story on it for marketing?
You absolutely hit on a core tension. Studios often see historical figures as Valuable IPs,
Mm.
intellectual property,
Mm.
brands, basically.
Mm.
They have name recognition, a built-in audience, which suggests, guaranteed income.
Mm.
And that pressure can lead to films where the actual story of that person isn't the story they want to tell. The financial incentive shapes the narrative.
So we've really unpacked this delicate, often tricky balance in films based on a true story. From the artistic choices made for drama, for entertainment, to the really profound impact these choices can have on how we understand history and on the real people involved. It seems pretty clear that the line between creative license and falsification is constantly shifting, and maybe often it's intentionally blurred. So, thinking about all this as informed viewers, how do you approach a film that claims it's based on a true story? Do you tend to take it at face value? Or does hearing that phrase now maybe spark your curiosity to dig a little deeper into what actually happened? And maybe the bigger question, what responsibility do we have, as a society to seek out those deeper truths that lie beyond the screen, especially when real lives and our understanding of history are potentially at stake?